So far we've discussed multiplying exponents, dividing exponents, we've discussed what a negative exponent is, and how to raise an exponent to another exponent. And we now have two more properties and then lots of examples to show us how to use all of these properties. For our first one, let's start with an example. Here we have 3x to the fourth. So using our properties of exponents, we know this means 3x times itself 4 times. And now that we have that, we can notice that we have 4 3's, which would be 3 to the fourth, and then we also have 4 x's. So an x to the fourth. So 3x in parentheses to the fourth power is 3 to the fourth x to the fourth. Let's try one more example. 7y squared would mean we multiply 7y by itself 2 times. And then looking at this, we can see that we have 2 7's and 2 y's, so 7 squared y squared. And in general, if we have something in parentheses like ab to the nth power, we have a to the n, b to the n, so essentially raise everything inside of parentheses to that power. Our next example, 4 over a to the fifth, this means we need to multiply 4 over a by itself 5 times. So when we have this, we see the top of the fractions, we have 5 4's, and on the bottom is 5 a's. Therefore, 4 over a to the fifth is 4 to the fifth over a to the fifth. Let's do one more example of this property. X over 2 cubed means we need to multiply it by itself 3 times. In looking at this one, we can see we have 3 x's on the top and 3 2's on the bottom. So 3 over 2 to the third power is x to the third power over 2 to the third power. And in general, if we raise a fraction to a power, a over b to the nth power, we're going to have a to the nth over b to the nth power. So once again, raise everything inside of the parentheses to that power. Doesn't matter what it is, just make sure everything inside of parentheses is raised to the power. Now let's do some examples combining this with all of our other exponential properties. Here I have x to the negative 2 times x to the negative 3 to the fourth power. We tend to want to work inside of the parentheses first, and the parentheses tells us that we're multiplying, which gave us our additive rule. We add the exponents. We now know that negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. And we know that raising a power to a power means multiply, so now we have negative 5 times 4, which we know is just negative 20. A general rule when we're dealing with exponents is we really don't like a negative exponent, so we do want to use our properties of negative exponents, which says move it to the other side of the fraction. So this is really 1 over x to the 20th power. Our next example, n cubed times 2 times n to the minus 1. Let's start with the power to a power to get rid of our parentheses. We know that when we raise a power to a power, we multiply. We also know that 3 times 3 is 9. And then whenever we're dealing with multiplying exponents, we add, so 9 plus negative 1. And we know 9 plus negative 1 is just 8. So our final answer is just 2 times n to the 8th. The 2 was kind of by itself this whole time and just kind of got carried along since we didn't have any other numbers out front. So in this case, the 2 is just going to be carried along. It's not an exponent, we're just going to have an extra 2. This one is much bigger than the ones we've been dealing with, but the key to these big problems is to just take them piece by piece. Let's start with just the whole numbers. On the top we have a 2 and a 4 and a 3 that we're all multiplying together, and on the bottom we just have a 3. And then now that we've done that, let's take it variable by variable. Let's start with the x's. Now I'm first going to try to simplify the top and then try to simplify the bottom and then kind of work on getting rid of the fraction. On the top, you'll notice we have 3 x's, and when we multiply, we add exponents. The bottom kind of gets left alone since we only have 1 x. We also have 2 y's on the top, so we want to add those exponents. And once again, the bottom will be left alone until a later time. Now that we've done that, we can just do some basic arithmetic. we have 2 times 4 times 3, which we know is 24. For the x's, I have 2 plus 2 plus 1, which we know is 5. And for the y's, 4 plus 4, which is 8. Now that we've kind of simplified the top a lot, we can actually start to use our properties of exponents for division. We'll start with just 24 divided by 3, which we know is just 8. We also know that division means we subtract our exponents. We're going to have a 5 minus negative 3 and then an 8 minus 2. It's really important to watch your signs here. A lot of people want to do 5 minus 3, but it's actually 5 minus negative 3, which is going to be the same thing as 5 plus 3. So for the x exponent, we have 5 plus 3, which is 8. And for the y, we have 8 minus 2, which we know is 6. So we now took something that started very, very complicated and made it much, much simpler at the end. Once again, we're going to start with something a little more complicated. And once again, the key is to take it piece by piece. Let's start with the whole numbers. 22 and 33. We know that those are both divisible by 11, and we can reduce that to 2/3. Now that we've dealt with that, let's start with the x's. Since we're dividing, we know we need to subtract. So I have a 2 minus negative 4, and once again, be very careful with the signs. Then we have the y's. The top exponent is a 1 and the bottom is 3, so I'll have 1 minus 3. Now that we've done that, we can kind of simplify these exponents. We know that 2 minus negative 4 is the same thing as 2 plus 4, which is 6. We also know that 1 minus 3 is negative 2. And now that we've simplified inside of the parentheses, we can start to deal with this negative 2 on the outside. The rule is to raise everything inside of the parentheses to that power. From there, we need to remember that raising a power to a power is the same thing as multiplying. For now, we'll leave the whole number alone, the 2 over 3 to the negative 2, and deal with that in a minute. Like I said, we need to multiply when we raise a power to a power, so for the x's, 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. And for the y's, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Now that we've done that, let's start to deal with this number out front, this 2/3 to the negative 2. Essentially, a negative exponent reverses the fraction. So this 2/3 to the negative 2 is the same thing as 3 over 2 squared. The negative sign is going to just flip the fraction over. And now that we've done that, we know that we need to raise everything inside of that to the second power. So we have a 3 squared and a 2 squared. We know 3 squared is 9 and 2 squared is 4. And then finally, we want to get rid of our negative exponent, which means move it to the bottom of the fraction. So our final answer is 9y to the 4th over 4x to the 12th.